Let's move on to the closer look this week, and it has to deal with our friends over the ocean because the European Union has officially entered a new phase of tech regulation, granting the European Commission expanded authority under the EU AI Act to directly oversee general-purpose AI developers like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google. Under these new enforcement rules, regulators can inspect models, enforce mandatory technical disclosures, and levy fines of up to 15 million euros or 3% of global revenue for noncompliance. As the EU sets the world's first comprehensive governance benchmark for foundation models, do you honestly think that these strict rules will make AI safer, or is it going to lead to global tech innovation slowdown?
It may well lead to certain AI types being unavailable in the EU because the cost of compliance can be pretty high in here. The EU says, I want to see all of your training data and verify that it is compliant with our EU copyright policies. Well, you may decide that the revenue that you can get out of the EU isn't worth the cost. Yeah, if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, you're not going to be there. But this is a pretty big market. And so I would expect that the non-European based AI providers will definitely want to be compliant here. They will definitely want access to this large market. And of course, we're seeing a growth in sovereign AI going on in European countries. And it's because this kind of focus on controlling what can be done, trying to avoid situations where an AI might be responsible for running the entire power plant or running a cybersecurity environment completely autonomously with no human in the loop. This heads us towards Skynet taking over and returning to our friend John Connor being required in order to stop these threats to fundamental rights. When this is what these EU AI rules are about, is making sure that AI isn't going to take over and destroy the world for us. Possibly not in quite the dystopian way that we saw in the movies, but probably in a very mundane way. Yeah, I like this as a bit of oversight. The challenge is, well, will the cost of doing the oversight, will this oversight organization be sufficiently funded to be able to drive the actual regulation? Interesting to see that the AI office has set up some anonymous whistleblowing and complaint mechanism. So anybody could make a complaint about any AI if they think that there has been violation. And I like also that there's some provisions in there to require that you state that that it is a chatbot you're interacting with rather than pretending that it's a human. That disclosure of whether it's a human you're talking to or not is kind of important. Tom, do you think the US is going to move in this direction, or because these rules exist in Europe, US-based AI companies are just going to have to lump it and learn to live with it?
They're going to have to lump it and learn to live with it because they're never going to implement these rules in the US. Remember, we're still fighting about those rules that they want to put in place with China about, what models can be used for what, and if there's going to be kill switches or things like that. And the people, again, are either vaguely okay with a general concept of regulation or full Andreessen, get out of the way of AI so you don't get hooked up to the torment nexus whenever it's created. But the issue here is that the EU has always played these games, right? And it's not a game in the grand sense of the thing, but this is the way that they play, is they are much more strict about regulation than anywhere else on the planet. And that has given us a lot of actual positive things in the tech space. I mean, GDPR has forced a lot of tech companies to provide tools that they wouldn't have been able to provide before. And yes, the cookie pop-up is annoying. Like, I get it. Yet we're still doing it because the price of not having that cookie pop-up is a lot of money out of your company's coffers. And I think you're right. What will end up happening ultimately is that the major AI model providers are going to be faced with a huge challenge. They're either going to have to pull out of a lucrative market, and that means leaving it to some other provider, or they're going to have to make some kind of a model that complies with what the EU is looking for. Both of those things are not agreeable to their business model, because either they're ceding the land to homegrown European providers, or more likely probably to Chinese model providers who can adjust their models enough to meet those requirements, or they're going to have to burn a lot of development time with two separate parallel tracks that, one of them is probably a less capable model that's going to appease the regulators. And I agree with you that they are going to be faced with a huge challenge. But I also think that what they're going to hope to do is use their money to buy their way out of this problem like they've been doing for so long. It's like, oh, yeah, man, it would be terrible if we were forced to follow the rules of this AI regulation thing. Then we couldn't spend hundreds of billions of dollars to put a data center in Germany or outside of Vienna or in Amsterdam to let us run these models locally. And it would be great for all of you people here and stuff and things. So they'll try that tact. I think it won't work though, because the EU values the privacy of their citizens. They value the capabilities of being able to bring these model providers to heel a lot more than they would care about a data center that honestly may or may not get built and definitely isn't going to provide a lot of jobs for the people in the area, because they're probably just going to try to import the cheapest construction and operations teams that they can. So I applaud the EU for doing something, right? Like, I feel like I've had the same conversation with GDPR and the DMA and all these other things, because those acts have had impacts on that. I mean, the reason why your iPhone charges off of a USB-C cable is because of the EU. The reason why the App Store was forced to be opened up was because of the EU. It's not always great, but it's better than just letting the tech and business people run amok and do whatever they want, which is usually not good for us in the long term.